Hello YouTubers and welcome to another episode of the vlogs. We've made it off the water for another session and we have to go fuel up because remember, food is fuel. As you can see behind me, some prep going on, or at least I hope you can see behind me, some prep going on for Henley Royal Regatta, just some tents and some different branding stuff for Leander, just to see what's available, what's getting put up. And behind me as well, the tops of the tents are gradually coming over of the boat tents, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to give a tour of the entirety of Henley Royal Regatta, sort of the tents and whatnot. Hopefully, I'm trying to get some permission because last year I didn't ask for permission and it wasn't a great time. But this year, trying to get permission, fingers crossed for that, and I'll show you guys sort of in the boat tents and all the sort of behind the scenes stuff that you don't normally get to see, especially if you've never actually been to Henley, been to the regatta itself. And I'm going to try and do that before all the boats arrives and gets really busy, and then once it does get really busy, I'll try and go in and show you guys the difference between the two, because it is once the boat tents are full, there's so much going on. But then again, I'll be racing at that time. But now, like I said, it is time to fuel up, because remember, food is fuel, especially after a session like that on the water. So we're back to the club now. Last sort of stint into Henley, into Henley Royal Regatta, and then I think we've still got another race in between now and then, but it is the sort of final, the last 500 sort of thing, or maybe sort of going through the K now until the last 500 was probably the last week maybe. But like I said, for the third time, it's time to fuel up. And we've got our fuel here to fuel up after the session. How was the session? Or what do you think of the food? One of the two.
The food's looking like it is.
I mean, it doesn't
fuel.
look.
It is just fuel.
Because food is fuel.
Food is that, kind of.
But let's fuel up. And we've made it out of the crew room, and now it is time to go do some weights. So let's get to it. And we've finished the weight session with the layers. Now it's time to go get changed and have a little chat about probably what the title is about. And we have made it outside of the club for another day. Looks like the rain has started to come down, but now we're going to talk a little bit about weight training and rowing. So I've spoken about it before, but usually it's when I'm in sort of winter training mode or sort of going through the winter, where weights is generally a bigger part of a program if you are doing weights. So I'm going to just talk about a little bit, so touch on if you should do weights or not. Obviously a lot of it is based on sort of my opinion, so you should definitely speak to your coach if you want to do weights, or speak to sort of whoever's writing your program, or who's in charge if you want to do weights, to see if it's beneficial for you. But weights can be beneficial if done correctly, and it's really sort of an individual thing if you should do them. So, do I think you should do weights? Well, if you are looking to improve sort of your power and your strength in general, it is a very good way to improve that. So it's quite difficult to do it to improve your power, to improve your strength on the water or on an erg. There are ways to do it, like power strokes, etc. So you can do it that way, but when you're in the gym, you can specifically work on strength, you can specifically work on power. So that's a benefit of doing weights. And as well, it makes a little bit of a variation to the program if you're doing weights. It gets you off the water doing something a bit different, which can have quite a big impact on training itself, because remember, variation is a key to motivation. But coming into race season, should you continue doing weights if you're already doing it, or should you be doing weights to help with sort of the races themselves? Like I said, you can work on strength and power, and in racing and rowing, strength and power is a big part of rowing. So for me personally, when I'm going into the racing season, I feel stronger when doing weights. So then when you take the weights away, I feel a bit weaker, so it's more of like a confidence thing. And so I like to prolong the weight sessions right into the season, but obviously that is up to who writes the program that I'm doing. And so if the weights aren't there, then there won't be any weights. I'm not going outside and saying, no, I'm going to do some bicep curls to make me feel strong. I'm sticking to the program, but for me, the programs, I've done both programs where it's like there's no weights at all, and then there's been weights throughout the whole season. And the programs with weights through the season, I feel personally just that bit more sort of together, that bit more coordinated, that bit more robust, if you will, when I'm doing weights. So I feel like when I'm going off the start line and I've been doing a bit of weights, then I'm really sort of like, I know exactly what I'm doing, I feel strong, I'm ready to go into that pain cave, get my head torch on and yam on it as much as possible. But there's an opposite side of the argument as well. Doing weights, we're doing rowing, we're a rowing sport, so why not keep the rowing and sort of add the things that you're like doing similar to racing? So doing starts, doing high rate pieces, etc., to get used to the racing stuff, and take out the weights because that's unnecessary energy that you're spending that you could be spending on working on the rowing. So they're both sort of arguments for and against rowing. Like I said, personally I like doing weights, makes me feel that bit stronger, but there are other reasons to do it and why not to do it. And obviously, like I said at the very beginning of this little bit of a chat, it is very individual. So let me know in the comments below what you think about weights for anything, not just for rowing, but for any sort of sport or anything that you might be taking part in, because it can affect, so it can depend on the individual as well. It can speed up your metabolism as well if you're doing weights and building it up over time, so that can help you out. But that's a whole nother conversation about metabolisms and weight. Maybe I'll talk about that at some point in the next couple of weeks. But as the rain starts to come down a bit harder, looking over the Henley Royal Regatta tents over there, it is time to go home and rest for the day, to get back to it tomorrow for another exciting day, probably on the water. So as always, Yam Squad, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, and I think what I'll do is post a question or a Q&A to my story in the next couple of days so I can answer some questions. I don't think I've done one of those in a while, so it is time to do one, and have a good one.